So there will be three parts to this lecture, and the first part of this lecture will be on global food and water security support analysis data through multi-sensor remote sensing. That is, we are using various different type of remote sensing data that includes Landsat, Sentinel, and other type of data. And of course, the all the methods and procedures involved in the big data analysis. And here you think about analyzing petabyte scale computing, because we are not only working at very high spatial resolution data for the entire world, and the satellite data is acquired even now, by something like Landsat. With the harmonized Landsat data now, you can get it 2 to 3 days, but something like planet scope and others acquire data at 3 meter resolution almost daily, covering the entire planet. So you can just imagine the quantum of data that is available for the world, and all the methods and techniques that are required to analyze this data. And of course, machine learning and artificial intelligence play a key role in how we can do this. And of course, cloud computing. Without, see, earlier, the parallel cloud computing has really made a lot of these things possible. Earlier, in just in workstations, it was always very difficult. So there will be three lectures. Mine will be the first one, followed by more specific irrigated and rain-fed area for the United States of America by Partha, and crop type mapping using hyperspectral data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence by E.T. Anis. And you can see our snapshots just to identify who we are. So in global, when we talk about global cropland mapping, this talk will focus on utilizing United States Geological Survey data. Most of you are aware of the Earth Explorer, where you can get this data, and a lot of Landsat data now also available on almost seamlessly on the Google Earth engine. And of course, NASA data, USGS and NASA data. USGS holds all the data, and this NASA actually distributes this data. All of the USGS distributes this data from the NASA satellites that are launched. So there is petabyte computing, cloud computing, automated machine learning algorithms, and at 30-meter resolution, this is probably the highest resolution for cropland mapping, and various cropland type cropland products that are being generated. When I talk about cropland, we are looking at various different type of cropland products. We are looking at the entire world and looking at where are all the croplands in the world, and we look at where are the irrigated areas and where are rain-fed areas, and any given pixel, whether it is a single crop, double crop, triple crop, that kind of a thing. So if you can click on a point, you will know whether it is a single, double, or triple crop. And then major crop types. For example, if you look at in world, there is about 1.8 billion hectares of cropland. Out of that, if you look at the major crop, it is wheat, which occupies about 22% of this area. And so we focus on major crops like wheat, corn, depending upon the percentage of the total cropland area. So mapping these primary products is of great importance to get details at great details about farm level. For example, if you want to look at a single farm anywhere in the world and want to know what is its biophysical, biochemical properties, what is its yield, and what is its productivity in terms of yield, and what is its productivity in terms of crop water productivity, and all sorts of different things that you can generate. But unless you have these primary products which are very accurate, you cannot really have these secondary data set that are mapped in great detail and in great accuracies. So in order to do this kind of work, the first thing that we need is a lot of reference data. So any machine learning algorithm that one can do, you need either like pixel-based classifier, like for example, random forest, support vector machine, or unsupervised classification techniques like isoclass clustering and things like that. But for that to happen, you need very good reference data. Where do we get this reference data? For 30-meter data to classify, we try to gather this data by various means. And one means is to get this data from a 3-meter resolution, planet-wide available data from, 3-meter data of the planet scope DOWs, DOWs and super DOWs. They acquire data almost daily. And the Norway's International Climate and Forest Initiative acquired this data and make, especially for tropics, freely available for the entire world. So what we did was we developed an app for this, and we said, okay, now and we spread the data points randomly across the world, and then we said we went into, for example, this pixel. We went into detail of each of these pixel and said, what is this? This is a cropland. Whether it is rain fed or irrigated, whether it is cropping intensity or crop type. So at least when you look at high resolution imagery, you can know what is cropland extent, whether it is cropland or not cropland. You can also know intensity, because by clicking at here and below this, there can be time series Landsat data, time series MODIS data. You can get a signature of that particular point. So the red line that you see here is a MODIS pixel 250 meters. So we try to take not only the large number of samples, but samples where we have definitive answers that whether it is cropland or not. So it is not always, if you are having large number of samples, but a number of samples are uncertain, then it is a problem, correct? So we want samples to be very sure what we are gathering about. So you develop an app, and then you generate data points across the world, and then interpret that and keep generating. This is again similar type of example. So what you see here is an image which is a 2 monthly composite. That means you can acquire data every day, and then you can get for example, normalized different vegetation index, 2 monthly composite, and that way you get clean images. So you get, that is how this covers the entire year, 2 month average, January, February, March, April, June, July, so on to November, December. So, and then this is a reference image. So you can know, okay, this is cropland and, or not cropland. So similar interpretations. And the second type of interpretations is going to the ground and collecting data, which you are all mostly familiar with, and you can have a precise GPS, or you can develop a ground data collection app, and then that can come into your server directly anywhere in the world. You can collect this data and it can come into your server. So based on this, just generating this point, for example, we have been interpreting this point, and you can see here this is just one map showing reference data for cropland and no cropland. So we generated, for example, 17,000 samples. And of course, there are some areas that we have not covered, but that is also being currently covered. So each one of them, out of 17,000, there are 5,399 cropland samples, about 11,000 odd non-cropland samples. Look at this, in terrestrial area of the world, about 14% of the terrestrial area is cropland. So naturally, you will have more non-cropland if you are spreading it randomly. And unsure, these are when an interpreter is not sure about samples, that also we classify as unsure. And we have samples distributed, for example, for Africa, North America, so, and all that kind of a thing. And here is also distribution from the ground data. So earlier I showed this one basically from this kind of high resolution data, and then from the ground data, so you can have all this distribution from the ground data. So you can see there is a massive amount of reference data set that is being collected. And Partha also collected a lot of this data for just irrigation. Where are all the irrigated areas of the world? And where are all the rain-fed areas of the world? So you got the point. Once you get this reference data, then you are in a position. Then the next thing that is very important in mapping is to definition. So in our definition of what cropland is, we kept it very simple. We said cropland if there is a standing crop, or if it is harvested but it is a cropland, it's a farmland, or it can be plantation. So in image, it looks like that. A standing crop looks like this, a fallow looks like this, a plantation looks like this. So when you combine all this, that is standing crop, cropland fallows, and standing crop, and the plantations is cropland by definition. By and also defining irrigated areas. Irrigated areas, definition. See, when you compare two maps on anything, you will see a lot of differences, and many people will discuss that these differences occur due to methodology and all those kind of things. But more than anything, the differences occur because of the definition. So one person might define something in some way, other person defines something that way. So you get two maps that are not really comparable. So in our case, when we talk about irrigated areas, we said even during growing season, even if you irrigate it once, it is irrigated area. That means it might have a true seasonal crop, but even in one season, one time, if you irrigate it, it is still an irrigated crop. And irrigation can come by various means. That is major dams, medium dams, minor dams, tanks like small tanks, and groundwater pumping. All of this is irrigation as long as it is an artificial supply of water. So these are some of the example of how, for example, centrifugal irrigation, run of the river irrigation. Run of the river irrigation is basically put a barrage here and divert water. So you have all these different type of irrigation systems, and this is, for example, Nine Basin. Major dam, Aswan Dam, is somewhere here, so the water comes and irrigates. So there are various ways of irrigation. Rain-fed areas are where it is purely dependent on rain, where there is no activity from artificially, human activity is not there in supplying water to these croplands. Those are rain-fed cropland. So they look, for example, like this. Like for example, in Midwestern U.S., it gets enough rainfall, and also, you know, it. Its weather is something like that. You can grow one crop a year, because of where it is in the latitude. And if it is uh, in African savannas, rain-fed croplands look like this. So you need to have some kind of an expertise in generating this type of information. Once you have that, what I call as a paradigm shift in how to produce global cropland map. And here there are 5 steps. One is you gather data from all sorts of satellite, whether Landsat, Sentinel, it can be Planet, for reference data. So you can have any number of satellites that are orbiting, but you get all that data, and create them as an analysis data cube. And this can be done on the cloud, for example, on Google Earth Engine or something. You can write some kind of Python codes or JavaScript code and stack all the data systematically, and then use various machine learning algorithm. And in fact, we have several papers, and almost all of these methods we have used. When I talk about machine learning algorithm, for example, random forest and support vector machine is a pixel-based supervised classifiers, and a hierarchical segmentation is an object-based classifier. And you can see here now lot of other, for example, a decision trees, regression trees, and all those kind of things. You can have any type of methods that you can code and compute using the reference data and these kind of data, and compute it on the cloud by writing scripts on Python or JavaScript. So you first start with based classifier, separate areas into segments, and then use some kind of a machine learning either supervised or unsupervised classifier. And you can see here all of these are papers that we have published where all these details have been discussed in great detail. And so we divide the world into 74 agroecological zone. The agroecological zone is nothing but based on the climate data. For example, 100-year rainfall data, 100-year temperature data, and all this climate data is put into some kind of a spatial analysis and divide the world into various agroecological zones. If you all this what you call analysis ready data have been created for each one of these zones and classified, and then you get classes. That way you are much more sure when you write your algorithm. So for each one of those zones you have, for example landsat data has 11 bands, and well, you can take all the 11 bands. Each band you can compute over a period of year or over multiple years, and then stack them. And there is a whole sort of processing chain that is involved in building these data cubes, which are pretty this one. Once you get that type of data cube, because you have reference data for it is irrigated or rain fed, you can actually develop a knowledge base. That means here non-croplands are shown in blue, croplands are shown in red. For example, this pixel and this one, maybe this one actually cropland also has some kind of similar spectral signature with the non-cropland, but that might move around in during other parts of the season. So you are able to separate that pixel, if not in this particular date, in some other date. So that way you can develop separability between cropland and non-cropland. And similarly for irrigation and rain fed, you can develop a clear separability between, for example, all the green is in irrigated, all the this is based on the reference data set put on those data cubes, and then knowledge is, once you make sure these are separable, and once they are separable, then you can write code and start running the algorithm. So based on that, for each one of the zones that was run, and actually you can go into uh, any of these site, either you can type in croplands.org and actually look at this in very great detail. You can zoom into any area in the world and look at the very pixel, and if I have time at the very end, I will show you. You can type in www.croplands.org and start looking at this, and you can see where are the irrigated and rain-fed areas and so on. And and this, if you look, we did this for the entire world, and we calculated there is 1.8 billion hectares of cropland, out of which 12.6% of the 1.8 billion hectares is cropland, and the rest is non-cropland. That is agricultural cropland. And how accurate is this data? So we have these error matrices. Error matrices, people might be very familiar, that you can use only validation data to validate this. For example, for irrigation and rain fed, for cropland and no cropland, we have here this map is produced at about overall accuracy of 92%. But what is important is how well is cropland mapped. Cropland has a producer accuracy of 83%, a user accuracy of 78%. That means we have mapped cropland where cropland should be found with the 83% accuracy. That means 17% of cropland are omissions. And non-cropland, which is not cropland but coming into cropland, is about 22%. This is something that we are currently improving. Yeah. So and so for each one of the zones, some zones have very high accuracy. For example, in this zone in North Africa, we miss only about 9% cropland, and there even non-cropland coming into cropland is also about 10%. That's it. So it's quite accurate. So you can see some zones are very accurate, some zones have a little more higher uncertainty. So, okay, with this, I give the floor to Partha to take over. Partha, I'll unshare the screen and then you can share yours.